Welcome to Starlight Sleep Tales. Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into a place that's somehow darker than a dungeon, smellier than a barn, and filled with more regret than a medieval stew. Welcome to the brothel, where romance goes to die and hygiene never checked in. So before you get too comfortable, take a second to like the video and subscribe. But only if you actually enjoy drifting off to mildly disturbing, deeply factual history. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now dim those lights and burrow into your blankets. Have you ever wondered what life was really like in a medieval brothel? Was it all velvet cushions and flowing wine? Or more like drafty rooms, questionable soup, and customers who forgot to bathe for a decade? How did brothel workers survive a place with more drama than a soap opera, more rules than a monastery, and hygiene standards that make your college roommate look pristine? What did people eat? What did they wear? Did anyone ever sleep? Or was it just a medieval version of all-night customer service with a higher risk of being arrested? Let's find out. Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1352 in the middle of the medieval red light district. You're cold, confused, slightly hungover from ale that probably contained more fungus than hops. And you've got a night ahead that will make you grateful for every boring Tuesday you've ever lived. You stumble through a narrow alley that smells like last year's cabbage, only to be greeted by a flickering sign and a door that cacks louder than your knees. Inside, the air is thick with smoke, cheap perfume, and the nervous energy of people who all claim to be named Marjorie. Welcome to your new home for the night. Don't mind the rats. They came with the place. Let's set the scene. You're cold, you're tired, and you've lost feeling in your feet somewhere around the third puddle you stepped in. The alleyway behind you is bustling with the suspiciously specific sounds of medieval nightlife. The crash of a dropped tankard, the distant shouting of someone bearing over onions, and the unmistakable splat of a chamber pot's contents making its daily escape into the street. If you're thinking this is just a regular inn with a little extra atmosphere, think again. The medieval brothel is part boarding house, part tavern, part fever dream, and entirely unlike anything your high school history teacher dared to mention. As you cross the threshold, you're immediately hit with a wall of mixed aromas: stale, beer, tallow candles, damp wool, and whatever someone tried to cover up with a handful of lavender. The perfume here isn't so much worn as it is weaponized, layering over centuries of mysterious stains and embedded regrets. If there's a draft, it's not coming from the windows. It's the collective sigh of everyone realizing there's no turning back now. The first thing you notice is the decor, which lands somewhere between forgotten attic and creative fire hazard. The furniture is mismatched, mostly inherited from customers who failed to pay their tab or simply vanished midwinter. There's a lopsided table holding a single candle that threatens to expire at any moment. Three-legged stools occupied by people with two working legs and questionable morals, and a faded tapestry on the wall depicting either a biblical miracle or someone dropping a pie. It's unclear. You're greeted, if that's the right word, by someone in a bonnet whose main job appears to be glaring suspiciously at newcomers. They don't ask for your name. Nobody here cares about names, but they do ask if you're paying up front. You nod, trying to look like someone who knows how money works. Coins are exchanged, counted, recounted, and then immediately pocketed. Receipts aren't invented yet. Your only proof of payment is the faint hope that the madam has a good memory. Let's talk about the other guests. A traveling merchant snores face down on the bar, having lost both his money and his shoes. Two local farm hands sit in the corner, whispering loudly enough for the entire room to hear as they attempt to muster the courage to talk to Marguerite, though which Marguerite is up for debate. A minor noble in an ill-fitting doublet is trying and failing to blend in. He's the only one whose boots haven't been chewed by rodents. You're shown to your accommodation, which is just a small, drafty room separated from the next suite by a threadbare curtain and the collective willpower of the building's occupants. The mattress is a sack stuffed with straw, crunchy and uneven, dotted with stains you hope are wine, but suspect are older than the 100 Years' War. A candle barely taller than your thumb flickers on the floor, threatening to extinguish itself out of pity. But the real stars of the show are your roommates. You've got two house cats of indeterminate color, one mouse braver than most nights, and an ancient grumpy rooster who seems to be here against his will. Every sound is amplified. The scraping of bowls, the clink of coins, the muffled argument about whether last week's bread is technically still edible. Through the thin wall, you can hear laughter, sobbing, and the occasional medieval version of customer service gone wrong. Just as you're settling in, the madam herself appears. She surveys you with the world-weary eyes of someone who's seen too many people try to pay in buttons. She offers you a cup of wine, which is suspiciously thick and tastes like it might have been strained through an old sock. You drink, anyway. It's either this or the well water, and nobody recommends the well water. As night falls and the brothel truly wakes up, you realize your modern problems, like losing Wi-Fi or not getting enough oat milk, are nothing compared to finding out you're not alone in your room. You pull your scratchy blanket over your head, listen to the distant sounds of medieval Nightlife, and make a note to thank your ancestors for inventing walls, locks, and soap. And so, your first night in the medieval brothel begins. If you survive until morning, you might just get breakfast, assuming the rooster lets you sleep at all. Welcome to history's worst Airbnb. Forget royalty. The brothel madam is the true boss here. She runs the show with an iron ladle, a razor tongue, and the uncanny ability to detect unpaid tabs across 3 rooms. She'll size you up in seconds and decide whether you're trouble, a customer, or worst of all, competition. Let's talk about power. Kings might rule kingdoms, but the madam rules something far scarier, a building full of desperate workers, demanding customers, and livestock that don't pay rent. She's got more authority than the local constable, more charisma than the traveling friar, and a memory for debts that puts accountants to shame. She remembers every coin, every broken promise, and every sock left under a mattress since last Michaelmas. You spot her right away, partly because she's the only person not rushing anywhere. She floats through chaos with the confidence of someone who has nothing left to fear. Not fire, not famine, not even the city's annual Clean Up the Streets Day. Her dress is made of several eras worth of fashion, stitched together into one intimidating patchwork of velvet, wool, and hope. Her hair is wound up tight, not a single strand out of place, as if daring the lice to even try. With one raised eyebrow, she can silence a brawl. And with a single shout, she can summon every worker, cleaner, and chicken in the building to her side. Her weapon of choice, not a sword, but the world's sharpest wooden spoon, perfect for breaking up fights, poking at suspicious stew, or rapping the knuckles of anyone slow to pay. The madam's day begins before sunrise and ends. Never, actually. She keeps a ledger under lock and key, though honestly, her brain is probably safer than any lock in the city. She juggles bookings, checks supplies, negotiates prices, and keeps the peace with a diplomatic skill the Pope would envy. Someone once tried to shortchange her with a counterfeit coin. Legend says she chased him through 3 streets and got her money back, plus interest in a complimentary goose. She knows every secret in the district. If you want gossip, the madame already knows how it ends. If you want credit, she'll laugh in your face, then offer you a bowl of soup as a consolation prize. She has a network of spies, mostly nosy neighbors and bored cats, who report on every visitor, late payment, and missing towel. The city bife. She calls him by his childhood nickname. And if he shows up for a random inspection, she'll offer him tea and a gentle reminder about that one time he lost a boot in her cellar. The madam is part boss, part therapist, and part medieval alarm system. She mediates arguments about whose turn it is to use the good pillow, soothes heartbreaks with a mixture of tough love and day-old bread, and can spot a liar from a mile away. She gives new workers the once-over with a gaze that says, "I've seen worse, but not much." Try to outwit her and you'll find yourself cleaning the yard for a week or worse, assigned to feed the geese. Every now and then, a customer tries to sweet-talk his way into a discount or a free drink. The madam deals with this by telling a story so embarrassing, so horrifying, and so personalized that even the most persistent cheapskate suddenly remembers he left the oven on at home. Rumor has it she once convinced a local lord to pay double just for the privilege of not being mentioned by name at dinner. Despite her tough exterior, there's a strange sort of loyalty in the house. The workers might grumble about her rules, but when the city guard comes knocking or a brawl threatens to spill into the street, it's the madam everyone relies on. She's the only one who can get the oven working, calm down an angry client, and scare away rats with a single clap. To outsiders, the madam might seem intimidating, maybe even cruel, but to her people, she's the last line of defense against the world's chaos. She gives out loans with interest, advice, whether you want it or not, and the occasional hug, strictly after hours and never in public. In the end, she's the reason the brothel keeps going. Without her, the roof would cave in, the stew would burn, and everyone would be sleeping in the alley with the goats. So if you find yourself in a medieval brothel, be polite, pay promptly, and never underestimate the power of a woman with a ledger, a spoon, and a list of grudges longer than the Magna Carta. Before you can get comfortable, you're handed a list of house rules longer than a church sermon. No fighting, no free samples, no credit, and for the love of all that's holy, no singing after midnight. Soap is strictly rationed and only slightly used. Let's take a closer look at these legendary rules, because surviving a medieval brothel isn't just about stamina, it's about obedience. First, you'll notice the rules are handwritten on a scrap of parchment in a suspiciously blotchy ink. Some rules look recently added, possibly after last night's incident with the goose. Others are so ancient even the madam's not sure what they mean anymore. No juggling torches in the main room. Someone definitely learned that lesson the hard way. Rule number 1, no fighting inside the house. This is not a lawless tavern or a medieval brawl pit. If you must challenge someone to a duel, kindly do so outside, preferably out of sight of the town guard. Broken chairs cost money, and the madam isn't interested in adding furniture repair to her already packed schedule. You'll find that bruised egos are to be handled quietly behind the privy or with the mutual exchange of passive-aggressive glares. Next up, no free samples. The brothel may be the medieval world's answer to customer service, but it draws the line at charity. Anyone caught giving away the goods for free is promptly put on laundry duty, which means boiling bed sheets in a cauldron big enough to drown your hopes in. Strangely, no one ever asks for seconds, no credit ever, and the madam means it. Forget about paying tomorrow. Forget I left my purse at home, unless you're royalty, and even then your night begins and ends with cash on the barrel. Any attempts to barter, swap IUS, or pawn off your second-best chicken will be met with a look of disappointment so severe it could sour fresh milk. No singing after midnight. This rule is strictly enforced following a legendary week when an ambitious apprentice bard serenaded the entire block with his song of 12 turnips. Everyone agreed it was a catchy tune for the first 5 minutes. The punishment for late-night singing now includes floor mopping, animal wrangling, and a temporary ban on soup. Now let's talk about the soap, the most valuable, hotly contested, and heartbreakingly rare item in the building. The rule is simple: thou shalt not steal the soap. This is both practical and philosophical. The soap is at best a shrunken nub of mystery origin, passed down from guest to guest, and containing at least 5 distinct scents. None of them pleasant. If you steal it, the entire house will know, because you'll be the only one who smells vaguely like week-old lye instead of goat. Soap usage is strictly supervised. Workers are allowed a ceremonial hand washing before dinner and an actual bath on alternate saints' days. For customers, it's a privilege, not a right. If you're spotted sneaking an extra scrub, prepare for the madam's wrath and a lengthy lecture on community hygiene. Considering the average medieval person bathes once a month, the mere existence of house soap borders on luxury. No livestock upstairs. That's another popular rule added after an incident involving a chicken, 2 goats, and a bucket of ale. Let's just say the lesson was learned and the stains have never quite come out of the carpet. If your animal can't pay, it sleeps outside. There are also a few unspoken rules you'll pick up fast. Don't ask too many questions about what's in the stew. Never comment on someone's real name, especially if they insist it's Marguerite. And if the rooster comes inside, just let him be. He's got tenure. These rules aren't just for show. They're the glue holding the chaos together. Without them, every night would devolve into a riot of spilled ale, broken furniture, and at least one small fire. The Madame knows this and enforces order with the grim determination of a medieval schoolmaster with a hangover. Everyone, worker, guest, goat, falls in line or quickly wishes they had. So as you settle in, clutching your precious sliver of soap and practicing your best silent hum, remember in the medieval brothel, obedience isn't just for fun, it's for survival. 'Cause nothing ruins a night faster than the madame finding out you tried to take the soap. You thought medieval brothel were all silk and mystery. Think again. Most workers wear threadbare linen, patched wool, and the occasional hand-me-down tunic that's seen more action than a night shield. Accessories include decorative fleas and a faint air of regret. Let's set aside everything you've learned from racy paintings and big-budget TV dramas. In a real medieval brothel, luxury was mostly an optical illusion, like those velvet curtains that turn out to be sheep's wool, dyed a heroic shade of burgundy. The actual dress code is determined by 2 things: what's warm and what hasn't fallen apart yet. If you're picturing sultry robes and a feathered mask, adjust your expectations to layered potato sack with bonus holes. The most popular fabric in the brothel is linen, At least what used to be linen before centuries of hard labor, hasty, repairs, and enthusiastic laundering turned it into something that can only be described as historically durable. The standard issue under tunic is a washed-out beige, but sometimes it's more of a question mark color thanks to the shifting patterns of stains that even the most optimistic washerwoman has given up on. And that lacy trim, it's just where the fabric frayed. Call it medieval distressed chic. Above the linen, there's usually a woolen overdress, hand-patched and repatched until it looks like a map of disappointment. Sometimes there's a faded apron to add a little functional flair. If you're lucky, you'll get a borrowed shawl, scratchy, but good at hiding the fact that your sleeves are different lengths. Brothel workers swap clothes more often than stories, so every garment has lived a full life and probably holds more secrets than the city beef. Shoes, meanwhile, are an exercise in compromise. The house issues a few battered pairs, passed around like a communal bread loaf. Some have holes, some have mismatched laces, and all of them have a faint, persistent dampness that can only be described as ambiguous. Many simply go barefoot, which is as medieval as it gets, until you step on something sharp and instantly regret centuries of technological progress. Let's not forget the true stars of the dress code, lice. Lice are not just a hazard of the job, they're practically a uniform. In an era when bathing is a quarterly event and combs are a status symbol, fleas and lice thrive in every hem, collar, and unfortunately personal crevice. Brothel fashion means you never dress alone. Scratching is so common, it's become a house rhythm, like the soft clink of coins or the occasional distant sound of someone falling down the stairs. Jewelry is minimal and highly practical. The average brothel worker might have a scrap of ribbon, a bit of colored glass on a string, or a lucky pin kept for protection or poking over eager customers. Real gold, only if someone left it behind in a hurry, and in that case, it's immediately claimed by the madam for the Communal Improvement Fund, which mysteriously never improves anything except the madam's collection of suspiciously nice hats. Hairstyles are simple and functional. Hair pulled back in a knot hidden under a cap or plaited to keep it out of the communal soup. Lice treatments are homemade, ranging from vinegar rinses to hopeful prayers. The house keeps a communal brush, but it's rumored to be cursed. The air of regret is a less tangible accessory, but it hangs about every outfit nonetheless. There's something about wearing the same tunic you've seen on 5 different coworkers and 3 customers that humbles the soul. If you catch yourself longing for a velvet corset, just remember velvet in medieval times was so expensive it would get you robbed, arrested, or both. Here, you're safer in your patchwork. And if you really want to stand out, clean socks, the rarest luxury. If you own a pair, guard them with your life. They'll be borrowed, bartered, and possibly stolen by the end of the week. In a world without fabric softener or scented dryer sheets, the simple joy of warm, non-damp socks is the closest thing to heaven a brothel worker is likely to experience. So next time you complain about your laundry day, spare a thought for the brothel dress code. Less lace, more lice, and a fashion sense best described as apocalypse chic. If you want to make it through the night, wear whatever you can, patch it with pride, and remember the only thing more persistent than stains here are the stories. Meet your customers, merchants, soldiers, tired travelers, and a suspicious number of clergy who insist they're only here to save souls. Every visitor brings their own unique odor, bargaining skills, and medieval misunderstanding of personal boundaries. Let's take a slow, slightly horrified stroll through tonight's lineup, because the clientele of a medieval brothel are nothing if not memorable. First up are the merchants. They're the ones who swagger in with jangling purses and slightly cleaner fingernails. They always claim to be just passing through on extremely important business, but somehow they know every local drink special by heart. Their bargaining technique, haggling for 20 minutes over the price of a room and then tipping with a foreign coin no one can actually spend. Merchants love to talk about themselves, about their wares, and about the one time they almost did business with a duke, except the duke tragically died of natural causes. Translation: plague or bad soup. Next you have the soldiers, gruff, loud, and so caked in mud you could plant turnips on their boots. Soldiers travel in packs and think they're charming. Most have spent weeks on the road, so the phrase smelling like victory takes on a more literal, nose-watering meaning. Their table manners are creative, and their idea of romance is arguing over who gets the least lumpy corner of the straw mattress. Still, if you want news about battles or the latest town burned to the ground, these are your go-to sources. Just don't expect them to remember your name or their own by morning. Travelers round out the regulars. These are the hollowed-eyed folk shuffling in at all hours, carrying nothing but a walking stick, a sack full of regrets, and a blanket with the texture of a dried fish. They're just grateful for a roof, a hot bowl of pottage, and a night without being rained on by the weather, or by the contents of someone's chamber pot. Travelers don't complain much. Honestly, they're too tired to notice if the stew has extra protein or if the mattress bites back. They'll sleep through anything, including medieval karaoke night. And then there are the clergy, so many clergy. Officially, they're here to check on the spiritual health of the house, but everyone knows what's really going on. You'll hear a lot about sin, repentance, and the importance of generosity, usually right before someone accidentally leaves a coin purse under a pillow. Some clergy are regulars, dropping pearls of wisdom, and sometimes actual pearls if they're particularly well connected, before vanishing at sunrise with a vow of silence and an interesting rash. Others claim they're just here for the soup. No one believes them, but the parade of regret doesn't end there. Occasionally, you get a nobleman slumming it in disguise, convinced no one will recognize him beneath his very common hat, which is actually a velvet cap with a feather so large it blocks the candle. Light, he'll try to pay in promises, poetry, or invitations to a feast that almost certainly doesn't exist. If caught, he'll swear he's just an innocent shepherd looking for lost sheep. Everyone rolls their eyes and lets him keep the act, if only for entertainment value. You'll also meet the chronically broke locals. These are the same faces every week, each with a new story about why they can't pay tonight, but will definitely make it up next time. One lost his purse to a pickpocket. One is mourning a beloved pig. One claims the moon is in retrograde, and it's bad luck to pay for anything on a Tuesday. The madam keeps a special list for these cases, and they usually end up doing chores or cleaning up after the goat until their debts are settled, which is medieval for never. Now let's not forget the occasional tourists, lost students, runaway apprentices, or traveling minstrels. These folks have big dreams, empty purses, and are usually fleeing something: a failed love affair, a bad grade in Latin, or just the local constable. They bring stories from far away, a little music, and unfortunately, a fresh batch of lice. Each customer brings something to the brothel: a new rumor, a new stain, a new chapter in the ongoing saga of what happened last night. Personal boundaries, not really a thing. A handshake might turn into a hug, or someone might just wander into the wrong bed and declare it fate. By morning, the parade of regret heads back out into the world, carrying away their secrets, their questionable change, and a faint scent of tallow candles. If you're lucky, all you catch is a new story to tell. If not, well, that's why the house keeps extra vinegar in stock. If you're hoping for a steamy soak in a scented candle, lower your expectations. The communal bath is a leaky barrel in the yard, and the soap smells like sheep. Most guests just try to drown their problems in ale and hope the lice don't notice. Let's break your modern heart right now. Personal hygiene in a medieval brothel is not just low on the list, it's the list basement. The concept of a relaxing bubble bath after a long night's work is as realistic as a dragon sighting. Instead, the nightly cleaning ritual is more survival challenge than spa day. If you want to freshen up, you're invited to use the infamous bath barrel, which is technically an ex-wine cask that now serves as both a bath and a science experiment. The water in this barrel is at best lukewarm if you're first in line, but after the first customer climbs out, the temperature drops and the water gains an extra brininess. By the third bather, it's less of a bath and more of a swap meet for skin cells and secrets. On busy nights, the barrel is a revolving door of feet, elbows, and hair that may or may not belong to current employees. No, there's no changing the water between baths. That would require both effort and a reliable water source. Luxuries the house can't afford. Soap is a closely guarded commodity, and it's really just a grayish lump with the aroma of wet sheep meets overcooked onions. It's doled out in slivers, and everyone's learned to guard theirs as fiercely as gold. Try to sneak a double scrub, and you'll draw the madam's wrath faster than someone singing after midnight. For most, a quick rinse of the hands and face is all the effort they'll spare. Full body washing is reserved for high holidays, epidemics, and visits from very important customers, at which point a heroic quantity of perfume will be splashed around to make up the difference. The rest of the time, you do what medieval people do best: embrace the smell and hope for the best. After all, in a world where everyone's ripe, nobody's nose is clean. The perfume doer is a blend of sweat, tallow, ale, and whatever herb was thrown on the fire last week. Lavender if you're lucky, cabbage if you're not. Guests are, if anything, even worse. Travelers arrive carrying the scent of every horse they've ever met. Soldiers think that dunking their feet in a trough counts as a bath. Merchants try to mask everything with strong cologne, which only makes things more complicated. The worst offenders are those who claim to be naturally clean, the medieval equivalent of someone bragging about being able to eat anything without getting sick. Lice, fleas, and their extended families are so common that they're practically members of the staff. Combs exist, but only in the sense that someone once found a toothless relic and claimed it was decorative. Flea picking is a communal activity, usually done while gossiping about who skipped out on their bill. Workers have favorite spots to sit where the breeze blows strongest, not to cool off, but in hopes that maybe the wind will carry away a few persistent stowaways. For those feeling especially fancy, there's always the option to visit the local bathhouse. But bathhouses come with their own hazards, gossip, scandal, and a strong possibility of running into half the town, including that one priest who always asks too many questions. Besides, bathhouses are expensive, sometimes banned, and always suspect. No one wants to explain to the bishop why they were just there for the steam. To cover the gaps in cleanliness, the house employs a system of strategic laundering. Bedding is changed. Occasionally, shirts and undergarments are rinsed when they begin to smell stronger than the communal cheese. But mostly everything is disguised with fresh rushes on the floor and a prayer to Saint Anthony, patron saint of lost causes and lost soap. So as you settle in for the night, surrounded by the fragrant tapestry of medieval life, remember in this brothel, hygiene isn't a goal, it's a rumor. And tomorrow you'll be grateful for every drop of that sheepy soap, every gust of fresh air, and every excuse to blame the dog for the way things smell. Because in the end, history stinks. And the brothel does too. Privacy is a fantasy. You're sharing a room with 3 snoring workers, 2 chickens, and a goat who claims diplomatic immunity. Every creak of the floorboards is a reminder that you're never ever alone. Let's talk about what bedroom really means in a medieval brothel. If you're expecting a private suite, soft sheets, or dare you dream, an actual mattress, adjust those expectations right now. The shared bedroom is a triumph of creative crowd control, featuring a rickety wooden floor, a ceiling so low you can comb your hair with it, and walls made of patch fabric curtains that do a heroic but ultimately pointless job of pretending to divide the space. The only thing separating you from the next person is the thin hope that everyone else is too tired to care. Your sleeping arrangements are less bed and more crunchy communal nest. A rough pallet stuffed with straw sits atop the cold floor, creaking every time someone dares to breathe. If you're lucky, you score a spot somewhere in the middle, away from the drafty cracks in the wall and only slightly within pecking distance of the chickens. These birds aren't just pets. They're both early morning alarms and late-night emotional support animals. As long as your idea of support is a sharp beak in the foot at 3 a.m. And then there's the goat. Nobody knows how the goat got here. Nobody knows how the goat remains here, but he's carved out his corner near the fireplace and glares at anyone who gets too close. The madam claims he keeps the evil spirits away. Others claim he's the reincarnation of a disgruntled landlord. Either way, the goat is the only one allowed to hog the blanket, and if you move it, you do so at your own risk. The soundtrack of your night includes the following: snores at 3 different pitches, someone muttering their dreams in Old French, the soft rustle of straw as a mouse relocates, and the abrupt squawk of a chicken settling a personal vendetta. There's always a midnight negotiation about who gets the good pillow, the one with the least amount of mysterious stains. Usually it ends in compromise, or more likely, nobody wins and everyone settles for a lumpy bundle of laundry, personal space. It's an ancient legend. On the coldest nights, everyone huddles together for warmth, forming a sort of human lasagna layered with linen, wool, and desperation. You might find yourself spooning with a coworker you barely know, one arm flung over the chicken for good measure. Nobody makes eye contact in the morning. If you think insomnia is a modern problem, Try sleeping in a room where someone always needs to get up. Whether it's for the chamber pot located conveniently behind a curtain that only blocks sounds if you believe hard enough to feed the animals or to chase off the aforementioned mouse. And don't forget the parade of customers who occasionally blunder into the wrong room, convinced they're looking for Marguerite, when really they're just one curtain short of disaster. Then there's the temperature. In winter, it's so cold you can see your breath, and your straw pillow gets frosty. In summer, it's a steam bath of bodies and barnyard aroma. Ventilation is a polite fiction. A single tiny window lets in just enough fresh air to keep hope alive, but not enough to make a difference. If you do manage to drift off, the goat usually wakes you up at dawn by standing on your feet, reminding you who's really in charge. And yet, in all this chaos, there's a weird sort of comfort. The shared bedroom is where stories are whispered, secrets exchanged, and the occasional forbidden laugh bubbles up despite everyone's best efforts to sleep. You realize as you pull your blanket tighter and try to ignore the chicken using your shoulder as a perch that you're living a slice of history. The exhausting, noisy communal side that never makes it into fairy tales. So as you lay awake serenaded by snores, livestock, and the distant arguments of your neighbors, remember privacy is overrated and sleep is optional. Is the medieval brothel, you never truly rest alone because the night, like the rent, is always shared. Forget the 9 to F5. In a medieval brothel, the real action starts after dark. Oil lamps flicker, coins clink, and the air fills with a chorus of fake laughter and actual coughing. You wonder if anyone here has ever had 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep. The sun has barely dipped below the crooked rooftops, and already the brothel is transforming. What was earlier a haven for exhausted workers and the world's laziest goat is now a bustling epicenter of medieval nightlife, if you can call it life. The atmosphere thickens with a fog of candle smoke, spilled ale, and at least 3 competing perfumes, all fighting to cover up the faint but persistent odor of turnips and regret. It all starts in the common room. The rough-hewn tables are quickly repopulated with merchants eager to part with their coin, soldiers looking for distraction or a fight, whichever comes first, and clergy whispering prayers and apologies in equal measure. The staff are already in motion, weaving between bodies with a kind of skill that only comes from years of dodging unwanted advances and flying tankers. The night shift is here, and business is officially open. The oil lamps' sputtering reluctant things cast everyone in a flattering golden glow, if you're standing at the right angle. More likely, you just look like you've wandered into a dramatic play about the dangers of questionable lighting. Shadows gather in every corner, perfect for whispered gossip and clandestine transactions, or for customers trying desperately to remember which Marjorie they spoke to earlier. The soundtrack is pure medieval, the snap of firewood, the jingle of coins being counted twice just to be sure, and the intermittent hacking of a cough that may or may not be contagious. Laughter rises and falls in carefully modulated waves. Everyone determined to sound more relaxed and successful than they actually feel. The barmaid spins wild stories to the soldiers, each one bigger and more unlikely than the last, because reality has never been a popular beverage here. For the workers, the night shift is a test of endurance. There are customers to charm, drinks to pour, songs to sing, and occasional Brawls to break up before the madam has to intervene with her legendary ladle. Every interaction is a performance. Smiles are practiced, jokes are rehearsed, and every movement is calculated for maximum coin collection and minimum personal injury. If you think customer service today is tough, imagine doing it while wearing a dress made of recycled bed sheets in a room where the fire keeps going out and half the guests can't remember your real name. Some customers are sweet, some are tragic, and some are just here to sleep. It off in the corner, leaving a trail of muddy footprints and soggy bread behind. On any given night, you might overhear a marriage proposal, a dramatic confession, or someone swearing eternal love to a barmaid who's already forgotten what he looks like. Secrets are currency, and everyone is always trading a little bit of theirs for a little bit of someone else's. Sometimes, in the lull between songs and arguments, you wonder if anyone ever truly sleeps here. The short answer, absolutely not. Breaks are rare and treasured. If you manage to sneak away, it's only to the cold storm to catch your breath, splash your face with water, or if you're truly desperate, sit on a crate of onions and pretend you're somewhere else. The night feels endless. Even when the last customer staggers out and the lamps are snuffed, sleep is still a distant hope. There's bedding to wash, coins to count, and the never-ending hunt for that one missing chicken. By the time dawn teases the windows with a pale gray glow, you're left wondering if you worked through the night or just lived it on repeat. The rooster crows, the goat yawns, and you realize the only thing more persistent than the customers is the feeling that you've never, not once, slept all the way through the night. In a medieval brothel, the night shift is less a job and more an act of survival. Business as usual. Dinner is served. It's pottage again. A thick stew containing vegetables, grains, and something that might have been a pigeon. If you're lucky, there's stale bread. If you're really lucky, it isn't moving. Let's break the fantasy right here. Eating in a medieval brothel isn't candlelit romance or decadent banquets. It's more like a game show where the only prize is not getting food poisoning. Pottage is the house specialty. And by specialty, I mean it's the only thing anyone knows how to cook. Every night, the same battered cauldron sits on the fire, bubbling away with a desperate hope that someone brought a fresh turnip or at least a handful of barley. It's less a stew and more a living record of everything that's passed through the kitchen this month. The secret ingredient is always whatever's left. Carrots that look like they're reconsidering their life choices. Onions from the bottom of the sack, and a generous scoop of last week's mystery meat labeled pigeon for plausible deniability. Sometimes the meat is rabbit, sometimes it's rat, and once in a blue moon, a very unlucky chicken. You don't ask too many questions. That's how rumors start, and rumors get you assigned to dishwashing duty. Let's talk texture. Pottage isn't smooth. It's hearty, lumpy, and sometimes chewy in ways that vegetables really shouldn't be. The broth changes color depending on what's been boiled in it lately, ranging from murky brown to suspiciously green. Some nights you hit the jackpot and find a whole bean. Other nights you wonder if that crunch was a bone or just an overly ambitious grain of barley. Then, there's the bread. Medieval bread. The only thing harder than the workers' lives. The loaf is dense, gray, and so stale it could be used as a defensive weapon in the event of a tavern brawl. If you drop it, it either shatters or leaves a dent in the table. Slicing it requires both technique and upper body strength. On rare occasions, someone brings in a soft bit from the baker's wife. An event so momentous it's commemorated with a round of applause and a moment of silence, if you want. Butter or cheese, you're in the wrong tax bracket. Here, dairy is reserved for special occasions, visiting nobles or bribes for the city inspector. Sometimes there's a spread, a suspicious smear of something that claims to be lard. You try not to think about it too hard because overthinking is dangerous in a medieval kitchen. The kitchen itself is a miracle of medieval engineering. A smoky fireplace, one pot never properly scrubbed, and an assortment of wooden spoons and knives, so blunt they might be safer than actual cutlery. Dishes are washed with boiling water, sand, and prayer. The cook, usually someone who failed at every other job, wields a ladle like a weapon and threatens anyone who complains about portion size. For drinks, you're served weak ale or watered-down wine. Water isn't trusted, and for good reason. It's safer to risk a mild hangover than whatever lives in the town well. On special nights, someone sneaks in a jug of something stronger. But be warned, the last person who drank from it claimed to see saints and then lost the ability to walk straight for a week. Dessert, you ask? There is no dessert. At best, you might find a shriveled apple or a wrinkled fig hiding in someone's apron. The idea of after-dinner treats is just another myth, right up there with regular bathing and comfortable shoes. Meals are communal, loud, and full of side commentary. The table talk ranges from the day's gossip to the latest debate about what exactly was floating in the pottage. No one eats. Alone. And everyone is eager to trade their bread crust for your slightly less moldy turnip. So as you finish a meal feeling oddly grateful to have made it through dinner without cracking a tooth, remember in the medieval brothel, cuisine is less about flavor and more about survival. And if you're still hungry, there's always more pottage. There's always more pottage. To keep the peace, the brothel employs security. Usually a large irritable mastiff who's paid in leftover bones and the right to sleep wherever he pleases. He's surprisingly effective, if not particularly discerning. Let's be clear, in a medieval brothel, the idea of a bouncer conjures images of a burly soldier with arms the size of hams and a glower that could sour milk. But here, reality is both simpler and somehow more effective. The bouncer is a dog, not just any dog, but an ancient mastiff named with classic medieval creativity. Brutus. Brutus is as wide as a wheelbarrow, mostly muscle and fur, with the kind of jowls that make small. Children reconsider their career choices. He is the undisputed king of the threshold. If you're a stranger, you meet Brutus before you meet anyone else. His job description is straightforward. Nap in doorways, inspect pockets for snacks, and emit a low growl at anyone who tries to sneak out without paying. No formal training, just centuries of canine instinct and a deep personal commitment to dinner. The moment the door swings open and a rowdy customer stumbles in, Brutus performs a quick sniff assessment. This is medieval security clearance. Do you smell like trouble, sausage, or both? The madam swears that Brutus can detect a liar just by the twitch of their toes. Rumor has it he once stopped a notorious thief with nothing more than a well-timed yawn. Most guests don't dare test him. Even the town's drunkest soldier will think twice before arguing with 120 pounds of dog with a bite force strong enough to crack a soup bone. But if you're a regular, especially if you have a treat in your pocket, Brutus will. allow you to pass with nothing more than a resigned sniff. Inside, Brutus patrols at his leisure, weaving between tables and sleeping wherever he's least wanted. If a fight breaks out, he doesn't bother barking. He simply wads into the fray, plants himself between the combatants, and gives them a look of such weary disappointment that the squabble usually fizzles on the spot. For particularly persistent troublemakers, he'll escort them outside with a gentle force of his considerable backside. The house rules apply to everyone, but Brutus enforces his own. No food left unattended. He'll confiscate it for investigation. No loud noises after dark, unless you want to pour the size of a frying pan resting pointedly on your foot. And under no circumstances should anyone ever disturb his nap. One unfortunate merchant learned this the hard way, and his shoe is still missing. Other security measures are more symbolic than effective. There's a wooden club behind the bar, used mostly for stirring soup. A rusty old sword hangs over the doorway, half as threatening as Brutus's morning breath. For emergencies, the madam keeps a whistle, though most agree it's just to call the dog in for backup. The real genius of canine security, though, is psychological. Word travels fast in a medieval town. Everyone knows the brothel is guarded by a beast who fears nothing except running out of bones. Petty thieves, jealous husbands, and even the occasional angry bishop will hesitate before starting trouble in a place where the bouncer drools on command. Of course, Brutus isn't perfect. He sometimes confuses paying customers with delivery boys, and once spent an entire afternoon guarding a ham instead of the door. His no-tolerance policy for cats is legendary. Still, he gets the job done and asks for little more than leftovers in a warm spot by the fire. So if you're planning to visit, remember, don't try anything clever, don't leave your stew unattended, and always greet the dog first. Because in this brothel, security may not be high-tech, but it's loyal, large, and always hungry. And honestly, Brutus is worth more than 3 guards, 2 locks, and 1 very nervous rooster. Sleep well if you can. The dog's watching the door tonight. Brothel operate under a shifting web of official tolerance, church outrage, and periodic crackdowns. When the bailiff knocks, everyone suddenly forgets their own name and tries to hide behind a curtain. Spoiler, there are no curtains. Life in a medieval brothel isn't just about keeping customers happy and the soup unpoisoned. It's also about playing a non-stop game of hide and seek with the law. On any given week, you're not sure if the brothel is legally tolerated, but frowned upon, an official, necessary evil, or the root of all sin, soon to be cleansed by fire and angry sermons. This means the house always runs on nerves, rumor, and at least 3 backup plans. The first and most important tool for legal survival: bribes. Lots of bribes. The madam keeps a stash of coins in a teapot stashed inside a larger teapot, stashed under a loose floorboard beneath the good rug. When the bailiff or town constable arrives for an inspection, the proper protocol is simple. Offer a seat, pour a drink, and quietly slide a pouch of coins across the table. The conversation is always coded. Is the house in order tonight? Translation: is the bribe ready? We've done a thorough sweeping. Translation: take the money, please leave. But bribery alone doesn't guarantee peace. The church has its own set of rules and its own agents. Usually a priest with a face like a thundercloud who drops by to remind everyone of the fires of hell, right before pocketing a little donation for the local orphanage. which happens to be staffed by his cousins. These visits require a performance. Workers cover up, customers look penitent, and someone starts a loud prayer just in case a passing neighbor is listening at the window. Guilt is the evening's dress code, and the air gets so thick with piety you could cut it with a communion wafer. Of course, sometimes the authorities decide to stage a raid. Maybe the local bishop needs a political distraction, or the mayor's wife is feeling particularly virtuous. Word spreads quickly. A nervous neighbor or a paid lookout dashes through the door, breathless with warnings. The response is pure chaos. Al spilled. Customers shoved out the back door, and staff suddenly engaged in extremely innocent activities like scrubbing floors, darning socks, or reciting poetry to the goats. Everyone forgets their real names and, when in doubt, blames everything on Marguerite. There's always a Marjorie. Hiding evidence is an art form. Money is whisked away. The better wine disappears. And that suspicious pile of coins becomes a collection for the poor. The madam produces a ledger full of fictional entries. 24 eggs, 1 bushel of apples, 3 barrels of disappointment. If the bailiff insists on inspecting the premises, he's met with Brutus, the dog, who has strong opinions about strangers with clipboards. If bluffing fails and someone gets hauled off for questioning, don't expect loyalty. Everyone has a story prepared, none of them matching. The key is to talk in circles until the officials are so confused they decide paperwork isn't worth the trouble. The record for the longest interrogation stands at 2 hours and ended with the bailiff buying drinks for the staff. None the wiser about anything. Still, the law can be capricious. Some nights the brothel is simply ignored, considered too useful for visiting dignitaries or wealthy merchants who get lost on their way home from church. Other nights it's the first target for a wave of moral outrage. There's never any warning, just a sudden tightening of the rules, a surge in fines, or a lot of loud sermons about sin that mysteriously coincide with tax collection. To survive, the brothel operates with 1 foot in the shadows and 1 eye on the door. Everyone learns how to keep secrets, invent new names, and stash a quick exit plan just in case. There's usually negotiable, and if all else fails, just blame Marjorie. It's not just the threat of angry husbands or rowdy drunks. Brothel life is a bingo card of medieval illnesses. There are no condoms, no antibiotics, and the best advice for a cough is drink more ale and try not to die. Let's start by admitting the obvious. Medieval brothel healthcare makes modern WebMD look like a luxury spa. The house medic is usually the oldest worker with the steadiest hands, a collection of homemade salves, and there are so many folk remedies being passed around that the kitchen sometimes smells like a tossed salad. One day it's vinegar and garlic, the next it's a dash of salt behind the ears. And for the really desperate, just keep scratching and hope for the best. Respiratory issues are as common as gossip. With every customer comes a fresh cloud of germs, and every cough is received with a moment of silent dread. If someone starts sneezing, the communal response is to pass the ale and lights. More candles, as if the flicker of tallow can scare off infection. There are no tissues, so sleeves are the medieval handkerchief, an arrangement that does wonders for the spread of colds and the general aroma of the house. Then there are the specialist hazards, the sort you can only get in a building with this many visitors and this little ventilation. Syphilis, the pox, and an impressive catalog of rashes are all considered an occupational hazard. Treatments range from herbal tea and denial to rub this suspicious ointment on it and hope it doesn't burn. The local apothecary does brisk business selling potions with names like St. Agnes Purifying Tonic or Maid's Comfort, none of which actually work, but all of which taste like regret and turnip. Injuries are another nightly occurrence. A well-placed elbow, a jealous partner climbing in the window, or a customer who's confused gentle affection with medieval wrestling. Bruises are the brothel's unofficial badge of honor, and a twisted ankle is just part of the job description. For anything broken, the options are grim. Ask the blacksmith's wife for a splint. She uses leftover shoe leather. Or just grit your teeth and hope the swelling goes down before the next shift. The kitchen, meanwhile, is a minefield of its own. Food poisoning is so routine it's known by nicknames. The pottage purges or the stale bread shuffle. There's no refrigeration, so you eat what's served, chew slowly, and hope your stomach is as tough as your willpower. If not, you're banished to the yard with nothing but a bucket and the rooster for company. Water not to be trusted. The well out back is questionable, and the river is strictly for emergencies, like the house is on fire emergencies. Most people drink weak ale or wine to avoid the very real danger of dysentery. Even so, stomach cramps are an inevitable part of daily life. The polite thing is not to mention it. Just clutch your side and nod knowingly at the other sufferers. Let's not forget the mental toll, sleep deprivation, anxiety, and the constant threat of arrest or eviction combine to make stress its own form of medieval plague. There's no therapy, just gossip, prayer, and an extra serving of whatever passes for dessert on bad days. In the end, health in a medieval brothel is a combination of luck, resilience, and pretending you don't notice that weird rash spreading up your arm. You hope for the best. You drink to forget, and if all else fails, you blame the goats. Because honestly, in a place where the biggest cure for any ailment is a wait and see, every sunrise feels like a minor miracle. Wages are paid nightly, and so are the debts. The madam takes her cut, the bouncer gets his bone, and what's left barely covers a new pair of socks. The house always wins, especially when you owe rent. Let's dive into the gritty reality of brothel economics, where every copper coin is measured, counted, and mysteriously lighter than you remember. Each night's takings are tallied with the grim precision of someone who knows exactly how far a single farthing can stretch. Spoiler, it's not very far. Workers line up after the night shift, blurry-eyed and hoping for good news, only to watch the madam's finger slide steadily down the ledger, like a judge reading off charges. First, there's the house cut, an ancient tradition, and possibly the earliest form of corporate overhead. The madam's percentage varies by mood, weather, and the current state of the roof. That leak in the corner, that'll be another 2%. There are deductions for broken crockery, lost linen, and once memorably for emotional damages suffered by the goat. Everyone grumbles, but the rules are the rules, and the madam is the only one with the key to the strong box. Next up, Brutus the bouncer. He gets his pay in the form of leftover stew bones and the first choice of sleeping spot. But don't think for a second that's the end of expenses. Somebody's always buying a treat to stay on his good side, or